Okay, good afternoon. Today we're going to talk and work more on your Seuss-style Black History research project you've been working on. And our purpose for today is to create a rubric. Someone remind me of what a rubric is good for. Okay, Annie, what's a rubric good for?
Self-evaluation and peer evaluation.
Self-evaluation, peer evaluation. Okay. Someone tell me what you remember about your experience using a rubric before. Tell me a little bit more about what would make a good quality rubric. Riley?
It would help you to know, like, if there was a presentation on Google Slides to help you know how many slides it would have to be, how many pages it would have to be, what information you would have to have on it.
Exactly. So she gave 3 examples of types of things that might be included on a rubric. Those things are called criteria. It's the things that you should include to create a good quality product. You want to add something, Noah J?
Awarding yourself a satisfactory amount of points for each one. Like if you did like 90 points for grammar and the rest of them 1 point.
Right. Rubrics do often have points because in school we do use points and grades, of course, to evaluate. But the main purpose for a rubric is for you to monitor the quality of your work. So I have shared a document with you. So you're already logged into your Google account. So if you'll go to your Drive and click the folder where it says Shared with Me, you'll find a document that says Rubric for Seuss-style Black History Month Research Project. Okay, so go to that document. When you get there, some of you are going to be tempted to create your own copy of the rubric because we've done that in the past when I've shared things with you. But this rubric is incomplete. Okay, so we're going to create this rubric together. You're all going to contribute to it. So for now, we're all going to share this document. So you don't need to make a copy of it. Okay, give everybody a moment to get to it. So as part of our lesson today, we're going to talk about the quality and the criteria for the Black History Research Project that you're doing. And also there'll be some technology things. So first of all, we're going to insert a table. Let me go to the Table tab. If you're typing, if you'll pause with the cursor for a second. I'm going to insert a table, and I'm going to make it have, I'm not sure if the smartboard will let me do it. Somebody want to do it on their computer?
I'm already on it.
Okay, let's make it have 4 columns, and we'll start out with 10 rows, and we can adjust that if necessary. So insert a table that has 4 columns and 10 rows. Good, and we'll go from there. Click away from that, good. Luke, I see that you're already there. So Luke, in this one, type criteria. Spell it to the best of your ability, and we'll go from there.
I'm on that one.
Yeah, put points. In this one, do we want to do teacher, peer, and student evaluation for this one?
Yeah.
Or just teacher and student?
Teacher and student.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, so Riley, type teacher, type student first, because I want the student evaluations to happen first.
Sorry, Riley.
And then, who's right here? Noah J? Type teacher in that one.
Okay.
Okay? I know, we have to navigate a little bit with sharing of the document. Okay, and make each of those headings capitalized if you haven't yet. So what I want you to do is think about our project and what the things are that we've talked about to be in the project. Can someone give me an example of something that we need to be considering as we create our product for Black History Month? Eric?
Drawing is sort of Seussified, like a real Dr. Seuss character.
Right, okay.
And how the poem is structured, sort of.
Good. So which one would you like to type about in our rubric? Do you want to structure of the poem? Okay, so remind me a little bit about the structure of the poem. And if you want anyone to contribute to that, you can. Tell me a little bit about what structure you're going to use for your Seuss-style poem about your character.
Sort of like, pattern like Dr. Seuss with, his syllables.
With syllables?
Like da da da, like that.
The rhythm. Da da dum da da dum. Some of you have had not always just the 3. Some of you have had longer ones, so depending on which Dr. Seuss book you read, sometimes they differ, but you are going to have a rhythm to your poem. So in the first one, Eric, type something like Seuss-style rhythm to poem. Okay? While we're talking about the poem that you're creating, tell me something else, another criteria that we would need to consider for the poem. All right? Luke, and then Noah J will come to you. Luke, what's something?
Name, full name.
Okay, the person's name. Let's not focus only on the name. What else about the person would we need to have included in a Seuss-style poem written about them?
What they did.
What they did. Okay. I told Noah J he could share next, and then we'll come to you, Annie. Noah J.
Another thing, like Dr. Seuss's style, like he uses repetition, so we could put like using some sort of repetition.
Okay, let's put that in one as well. So repetition in the poem. Let's go back to the content of the poem, what the poem actually says. We want to have the person's name, and what else, Annie?
True information.
True information. So make sure that your poem is grounded in your research that you've been doing, okay, and that it has true information. And Reagan, did you have something you wanted to add? Okay. So what they did, something about the impact that they made. All right. Could you include other details as well? Sure. And that kind of goes back a little bit to that document that we talked about yesterday with applying the icons of depth and complexity to your research. So when you're thinking about this, the big idea would be what they did. What was the big impact that they made in history? But you can include other details. You could include hardships that they faced, like the ethics icon. Okay? So with the poem, we've talked about it being in a Seuss style, with rhythm, with repetition, with true information, with information about the person. Okay? Anything else that you think we should focus on when it comes to the poem itself? And then we can talk about other elements, like the art that Eric mentioned. Luke?
The Seuss twist.
The Seuss twist. Can you explain a little bit more what you mean by the Seuss twist?
Like words that don't make sense.
Right. Sometimes how Dr. Seuss uses words that don't make sense. Okay. Do we want to make nonsense words? Do we want to use those a lot since we're focusing on a historical figure?
Maybe we could put that under Seuss style.
It could be under Seuss style. With the top one, the Seuss style, that was talking a lot about the rhythm. How about if we make one combined with nonsense words or like rearranged word order? Can someone give me an example? I know a couple of you have already started your drafts of your poem. Anybody willing to share an example of how you've had a strange word order in one of the lines of your poem? Reagan? Over 300 inventions he got, and
It was like peanut butter and bread, not over 300 inventions.
Yeah. Peanut butter invent he did not. So you see how that's not a normal order of words, but it sounds like Dr. Seuss would write something. And that's an interesting way for her to share about your person, George Washington Carver. You have another thought, Annie?
I had with the word order.
Mhm.
I had before I found my real information and changed it. I had he wrote not blues but jazz.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So examples, specific examples about word order. Did you have another thought, Noah J?
Our illustrations of Dr. Seuss style of characters, we need to make a criteria for that.
Okay, good. So we've talked quite a bit about the poem. Let's talk about the illustration, because we're also going to provide an illustration of our person in a Seuss style. So Eric has mentioned it, Noah J has mentioned it. What would be some details to think about when it comes to Dr. Seuss style illustrations? What are the things that we've noticed when we've looked at samples of his work? Luke?
Eric, come back to me.
Yeah, I can come back to you. Riley?
The characters usually have a really small head.
Usually a small head. Okay. Did you think of it?
Yeah.
What did you think of, Luke?
Have long necks.
They have long necks. All right. What else? Those of you that are not being as vocal. I see that some of you are already contributing to our rubric, which is good, but make sure that if you have a good thought, that we get to hear from you, okay? So Sue style illustration. What I might recommend, for the Sue style illustration, do we want to make all the different characteristics of the illustration a whole separate category, or do we want to add to that box some examples? Because do we need to require that everybody have a beak nose and everybody have a long neck? Those are just some of the types of things you can consider, right? Because Olivia just showed that she has a Dr. Seuss illustration where those characteristics aren't always true. Okay? Let's see what we have here. Seuss style poem. We've got some things about the poem, making sure that it's true information, some nonsense words. Where it says nonsense words, someone adds / unusual word order. And it's okay if it takes up more than, if the cell has to expand to take up more space. Someone added here about the person. Anybody want to add a little bit more about what you meant by that entry on our rubric to make sure that when we use this rubric to evaluate your work, we understand? No one?
Oh, sorry.
This one about the person, how is that different from true information? I just want to make sure our rubric is clear.
It goes with information. Well, that could be like, that could be, instead of about the person, we could do, like, information about the person. Well, actually,
Yeah, I just want to make sure that I understand, we all understand how this one and this one are different from each other. You see what I'm saying? If we can't decide how true information about the person are different, we don't need both of those criteria. Annie, do you have a thought?
About the person may be like about their child or what made them shape up to be famous.
Okay. So maybe we could have one about true information. Maybe we should have different criteria that gives some specifics about the type of information we can include. Maybe one is about childhood details or what impacted them. And then maybe one about what impact they made on others. Does that make sense? So someone changed this one that says about the person, what impacted them. And then someone add a new cell that says how they impacted others. Does that make sense? Or how they impacted history or how they impacted the world. I'll let you think about how we might want to make that worded. Okay? Noah P., what would you like to share or add or ask?
I was gonna say, what I think Annie was trying to get at was like chronologically organized information.
Okay. So Eric, did you hear what Noah P. said, what his suggestion was that we might want to consider?
No.
That it's logically organized. So should we put something that talks about, we talked about it being Sue style. So logically organized or something about,
Chronologically? Yeah, that's what I said.
could be chronologically, okay. Would you have to start with childhood and go to like later in life, and then would it have to be chronological, or could you start with how they impacted? Would that be okay too? As long as when you read through your poem, it makes sense. Reagan, did you want to add something?
I found it, but on the rubric, we made little cards. These are what we had to find for in our.
Right.
We, like, put with what goes together and how we should like for our rubric.
Okay. So I like how yours. Reagan is sharing a good idea about how the research that you have done, use that, okay, to help you decide what's important to go in your poem. Because we want to make sure the poem reflects your person. Don't force the information to fit into the structure of the poem, okay? So let's just keep it general, a structure that makes sense, because based on your individual person that you're researching, that structure might differ, okay? And whenever we're working in just a little while, you can share with others at your table group or ask advice, and we can have some discussion about how that structure might work for your particular person. So we've talked about the poem that you're writing. We've talked about the illustration to go with it. Someone mentioned grammar. Okay, so that could include all of those things as far as punctuation. What else would be included with grammar? Luke?
Punctuation and commas.
Mm-hmm. Yep, commas. Do we have to follow all those punctuation rules with poems? No, not always. So we do have some flexibility with poetry. We might look at some sample Dr. Seuss ones to see how he uses punctuation. This would also include spelling and things like that, and you can have support during the writing process for that. Let's include a couple of work habit elements to our rubric. What types of work habit things do we want to keep in mind? Noah J?
Did we do organization yet?
We talked about it, but it's not on there yet. So can someone put logical organization as one of the criteria? Oh, you know what? We might have run out of space there. So we can add another. Does anybody already know there's several different ways here's a technology tip. There's several different ways that you can add a new row to a table. I haven't heard from you yet, Mary. What's one way that you could do it?
So you right click.
Mm-hmm.
Click if you want to insert it above, you click insert row above.
Right. So try this on yours. Everyone don't do it, but if you right click, you'll see some options, and one of the options that will show up, you can insert a new row above or below. Okay? Does anybody know another way that you could add a new row to a table? Here's a keyboard hint that you can keep in mind. If you click in the last cell and hit the tab key, it will add a new row. And then we can add some more of the criteria that we're thinking of, okay? Yeah. And if we add more than we need, those can be deleted later, usually by right-clicking is the strategy that I use to delete because it will pop up with that option. Okay, so Seuss style poem, repetition, true information, organization. Put something here about work habits, perhaps time on task.
Evidence of time on task.
Evidence of time on task. You want to type that one in for us, Riley? Oh, we need to add it in a row there. Okay, we're gonna still, this will be a working document. That's one of our benefits with Google Docs is that we can always add more things as we are going through the process to make sure that this rubric is gonna help us create the best product possible. But for now, it's time for me to give you more time to work on your research, your writing, your illustrations, answering questions. Yes, Annie?
What is the difference between person info and reflect person?
I think that that's something we'll need to continue making sure that we're clear about because we probably need to either clarify or delete one. So that's a great question. All right.
Since we have true information, I think we should delete person info because we already have true information on there.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. All right. For now, we're going to pause with the rubric. So find a good stopping place on what your thought is for now. And we will later, after you've had a chance to work on this, we will decide on the quantity of points that we think each one will be worth. But I want to give you some time to dig back into your project today as well. Okay?